Tendai opened the door half asleep, but when she saw her brother's children shivering in thin pajamas, their lips pale, their feet bare on the icy ground, she froze. Little Beezy whispered, voice trembling. "Auntie, we didn't know where else to go. Daddy said the house isn't ours anymore, and they locked us outside." And in that moment, Tendai realized something monstrous was happening inside her own family. Tendai quickly closed the door behind the children, her heart pounding. Their small bodies were shaking, teeth chattering from the cold, and their tiny feet were red and raw from standing on the frozen ground. She scooped them up one by one, wrapping them tightly in thick blankets she had kept for emergencies. She handed them warm cups of tea, hoping it would help them feel safe, but their eyes stayed wide and scared, refusing to meet hers. She knelt down beside them, her hands trembling slightly as she asked gently, "What happened? Why are you out there like that?" The children glanced at each other, fear written all over their faces. Little Beezy shook her head slowly and whispered, almost breaking, "We're not allowed to tell." Tendai's stomach twisted. That one simple sentence carried a weight she couldn't understand. She had thought she knew her family, that she could trust her own brother, but now a cold, sinking feeling settled deep inside her. There was something wrong, something dark happening behind the walls of her own family home. Tendai held the children closer, trying to calm herself as much as them, but her mind raced. Questions flooded her. Why would her brother hurt his own children? What secret were they forced to keep? The warmth of the blankets and the tea did nothing to ease the growing fear in her chest. That night, as the children curled up beside her, silent and frightened, Tendai realized this was just the beginning. Something monstrous was hiding in plain sight, and she had no idea how deep it went. The truth was coming, and it would change everything she thought she knew about her family. She stayed awake, listening to their soft, uneven breathing, feeling powerless and terrified, but knowing she couldn't look away. The night that had started so normally had ended in a chill that no blanket could fight, leaving Tendai alone with the heavy, terrifying thought that the people she trusted most might be capable of the unimaginable. The next morning, Tendai bundled the children up again and decided to take them back to their home. She hoped that once they were safely inside, her brother would feel ashamed and apologize, that he would see the wrong in his actions. But as soon as Lekin opened the door, any hope she had vanished. His face was blank, almost bored, as if nothing serious had happened at all. He looked at her and the children and said casually, "Oh, they found their way to you? Good. Keep them if you want." His voice carried no concern, no remorse. Behind him, his wife leaned against the wall, arms crossed, smirking like she was enjoying the situation. Tendai froze, feeling a cold knot form in her chest. She took a step closer to Beezy and noticed something that made her heart stop. There, on the child's arm, were dark marks shaped like fingers. The bruises were fresh and angry-looking, as if someone had gripped her tightly in anger or punishment. Tendai's hands trembled, and she instinctively reached to examine the bruises, her mind spinning. How could her own brother, her family, do this to a little child? And why would he act like it was normal? The children's eyes darted nervously between her and Lekin, too scared to speak, as if they knew that answering would bring even more pain. Tendai felt a wave of shock and disbelief wash over her. The man she had grown up with, the brother she had trusted and loved, now looked like a stranger. A cruel, cold stranger who could hurt children and not even flinch. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but she had to stay calm for the children. She forced herself to kneel beside Beezy, gently holding her arm, whispering soothing words, trying to hide the rage and fear bubbling inside her. The children clung to her as if she were their only anchor in a storm they didn't understand. Tendai realized that nothing she had imagined could have prepared her for this moment. Lekin wasn't just ignoring what he had done. He was proud of the control he had over them, proud enough to mock her silently with his words and expressions. That day, Tendai understood the terrifying truth. Sometimes the people you love the most can become complete strangers. And protecting the innocent might mean facing the very darkness that lives within your own family. Tendai's hands shook as she looked at Lekin, anger and fear twisting inside her. She took a deep breath and said firmly, "What happened to them last night? Why are they covered in bruises? How could you lock your own children outside?" She expected him to feel even a little shame, to explain, maybe even apologize. But instead he laughed, a cold, cruel laugh that sent a shiver down her spine. "Discipline," he said, shrugging as if it were nothing. They need it. You shouldn't interfere in how I raise my kids. Tendai felt her heart pound. Discipline? She whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. Those are marks from your hands, Lekin. This isn't discipline. It's abuse. He leaned back, crossing his arms, smirking like she was being ridiculous. Then he said words that made her blood run cold. Mind your business or you'll regret it. You're not their mother. Tendai froze. She had heard threats before, but never from her own brother. Never in such a way that made her question her safety. The weight of his words sank in slowly. He was serious. The man she had trusted and grown up with, the one she had thought would always protect her and his children, was now capable of intimidation and cruelty that scared even her. Tendai swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. I am their aunt. I am family. I cannot just watch you hurt them, she said, but even she realized her words sounded small against the dark authority in his tone. The children huddled closer to her, sensing the tension, their eyes wide and frightened. For the first time, Tendai truly understood what fear meant. Not fear of strangers, not fear of the world outside, but fear of someone whose blood ran in her veins. Lekin had turned into someone unrecognizable, someone dangerous. She felt a shiver run through her body, her mind racing with questions about how far he could go. Could she stop him if he decided to hurt them more? Could she protect the children from someone she had once loved as a brother? Her hands tightened around the children's small shoulders, a sudden determination rising alongside the fear. She would not let them be broken, not by Lekin, not by anyone. But she also understood, with a deep, icy clarity, that protecting them would not be easy. The house felt colder somehow, the walls closer, and Tendai realized she was standing on the edge of a storm she could not yet see, one that involved the people she had always called family. After bringing the children home and making sure they were warm, Tendai sat with them at the small kitchen table, offering soup and bread. Their hands shook as they held their spoons, their faces pale and tired. For a long time, they ate in silence, staring down at their bowls, too scared to speak. Tendai waited patiently, letting them feel safe, letting them know she was not going anywhere. After a while, little Beezy finally looked up, eyes glistening with tears. Auntie, we can tell you now, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Tendai leaned closer, taking her small hands gently in hers, her heart tightening. It's okay, you can tell me everything. Nothing will happen to you here, she said softly. The two children exchanged a nervous glance before the older one, Chima, began in a trembling voice. They locked us outside. Because we didn't do what Daddy told us. We didn't lie. Tendai's stomach sank. Lie about what? She asked, keeping her voice calm, hiding the anger that threatened to rise. The children hesitated, glancing nervously at each other. Finally, Beezy whispered, It's about the money. Daddy said we had to say you took it, that it belonged to him. And he said we had to say bad things about you, that you were trying to steal. Tendai felt a sharp pain in her chest, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Her brother had forced the children to protect his lies, to cover up something wrong he had done. And now the innocent ones were terrified of telling the truth. They said we had to say that, or we wouldn't come inside. We were scared, Auntie, Chima added, his voice breaking. Tendai pulled them close, hugging them tightly. It's not your fault, she whispered, her own voice shaking. You did the right thing by telling me the truth. I promise you, I will protect you. The children clung to her, trembling, their small bodies shaking not just from the cold, but from the fear they had carried in silence. In that moment, Tendai realized the full depth of her brother's betrayal. He had turned his own children into pawns in a dangerous game, using them to lie, to hide his greed, and to try to hurt her. But now, with the truth finally spoken, Tendai felt a spark of power. She knew the path ahead would be difficult, but she also knew one thing. The children were safe with her, and their voices had finally been heard. That night, she stayed awake, holding them close, thinking about the injustice and the courage it took for them to speak. The small, frightened whispers of the kids had revealed a truth so deep, so cruel, that Tendai understood this was only the beginning of the fight to protect them, and to reclaim what was taken from her. Tendai went to her laptop, her hands still shaking from the night's revelations. She opened her bank account, expecting to see her savings untouched, the little nest egg she had been carefully building for years. But as the screen loaded, her heart sank. The account balance was zero. Every single penny she had saved, her emergency fund, the money she had worked so hard for, was gone. She blinked, hoping it was a mistake, refreshing the page over and over, but the numbers never changed. Panic mixed with disbelief. How could this happen? Who would take something she had earned with her own hard work? Her eyes shifted to the children, who were sitting quietly on the couch, still pale and scared. Beezy looked up hesitantly, her small voice barely above a whisper. "Auntie, Daddy said you won't need it," she said. "He said it's his right, because you owe him for raising you." Tendai felt the world tilt beneath her. Her knees weakened, and she sank into the nearest chair, unable to breathe for a moment. Her own brother, the man she had grown up with, the person she had trusted, had stolen from her. Not only that, but he had used the children as lookouts, as spies to make sure she didn't notice until it was too late. Her mind raced. Every smile he had given her, every time she had helped him, every time she had thought he loved and trusted her, now felt like a lie. The betrayal cut deeper than she could have imagined. And the worst part? He had involved the children, turning them into unwilling accomplices, using their fear to cover his crime. Tendai's hands clenched into fists, but she forced herself to stay calm. She looked at Beezy and Chima, her heart aching for them, and whispered, "It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong." They nodded, eyes wide, tears brimming. Tendai sat back, trying to process the enormity of what had happened. The anger, the shock, the betrayal, it all collided inside her. She realized that confronting him now without a plan could be dangerous. She needed evidence. She needed a way to take back what was hers and protect the children. Her mind began to work slowly, carefully, thinking about what steps to take. But one thing was crystal clear. Lekin had crossed a line he could never take back. He had stolen her hard-earned money, manipulated the children, and revealed his true self. Tendai felt a surge of determination rise through the fear. He had underestimated her, underestimated what she was capable of. And now, she knew exactly what she had to do. The betrayal was complete, but Tendai would not let it destroy her, or the children she had sworn to protect. Tendai sat at her kitchen table late into the night, the children asleep in the next room, their soft breathing a reminder of why she had to be careful. She knew confronting Lekin without proof would be dangerous. He was unpredictable, and she could not risk the children's safety. So instead of storming over and accusing him, she began to quietly gather evidence, methodically, step by step. First, she went through her bank records, printing every transaction she could find, marking the ones that showed money disappearing without explanation. Each line of numbers, each transfer that wasn't hers, made her stomach tighten, but also fueled her resolve. She then checked her messages, and there it was, texts and emails Lekin had sent, pretending to be her, covering his tracks, trying to make it look like she had authorized withdrawals she never did. Her hands shook as she read them, but she stayed calm. She also found old voice notes she had saved on her phone. Lekin's voice was clear in them, talking casually about taking what belongs to him, and how she supposedly owed him for raising her. Hearing it in his own words sent a shiver down her spine, but it was exactly what she needed. Finally, she turned to the children. She explained gently that they could help by telling the truth, recording what had happened to them in their own words. At first, they were nervous, scared of saying something wrong. But Tendai reassured them, hugging them close and whispering that no one could hurt them here, that she would protect them. Slowly, they spoke, their voices quiet but steady, describing the nights they had been locked out, the bruises, and everything they had been forced to say. Tendai listened carefully, making sure every word was recorded clearly. As she sat back and looked over the files, the recordings, the documents, and the printed messages, a sense of clarity filled her. She was not doing this for revenge, she reminded herself. She was not trying to humiliate her brother, or hurt him for her own satisfaction. She was doing this for justice, for herself, for the children, for the truth. Lekin had crossed a line that could not be ignored, and now she had a way to show it without putting anyone at risk. Every piece of evidence was another step toward protecting the children, reclaiming what had been stolen, and finally making her brother face the consequences of his actions. Tendai felt a quiet determination settle in her chest. She was no longer just reacting to fear and betrayal. She was preparing. And when the time came, There would be no escaping the truth that it was late when the sound of banging on the door shattered the quiet of Tendai's home. Lekin was standing there, red-faced and furious, shouting her name, demanding the children back. Tendai's heart pounded, but she stayed calm, motioning for the kids to hide in the back room. Lekin pushed the door open before she could stop him, storming inside and knocking over a chair. He grabbed a vase from the table and threw it across the room, glass shattering everywhere. "Give me my children!" "Now," he yelled, his voice shaking with rage. Tendai's hands stayed steady as she moved slowly to the table, where her phone was positioned, recording everything. She had anticipated that he might come, that he might lose control, and she had prepared for this moment. Lekin continued, his face twisted in anger. "You think you can keep them from me? You owe me your life. I can take whatever I want." His words were meant to intimidate, to scare her into giving in, but Tendai's fingers barely moved, just enough to make sure the phone was capturing every word. The children peeked from the doorway, their eyes wide, frightened but safe. Lekin's shouting echoed through the house as he smashed another lamp, ranting about how everything was his right, how she had no claim to anything he wanted. Tendai breathed slowly, keeping her voice calm, almost soft. "Lekin, stop. You are making this worse for everyone. Sit down and we can talk," she said. But he ignored her, raging on. Yet in the middle of his outburst, Tendai felt a strange sense of power. Every threat, every angry word, every violent movement he made was being recorded. Every piece of evidence she had carefully collected now had a witness, capturing the truth exactly as it happened. Her heart still raced, but fear was tempered by control. When he screamed, "I can take whatever I want," she held her ground. She could almost hear the sound of the justice she had been quietly building, hidden in that small phone on the table. This was it. The proof she had worked so hard to gather, the recordings, the bank statements, the children's voices, all of it was coming together. Lekin's own anger, his own words, would finally show the world who he really was. Tendai's calm in the chaos contrasted sharply with his fury, and she knew deep down that this night, terrifying as it was, would mark the moment everything changed. The storm in her home was real, loud, and dangerous, but it also revealed the key she needed. Finally, she had what she needed to stop him. Not with force, not with shouting, but with truth. The next morning, Tendai woke early, her mind clear and steady. She had planned every detail, every word, every piece of evidence. She called Lekin and his wife, asking them to come over for a discussion, keeping her voice calm and polite, hiding the storm that had raged the night before. She made sure the children were safe in another room, knowing this confrontation would be difficult but necessary. When the doorbell rang, she opened the door to see Lekin and his wife standing there, faces full of arrogance, smirks plastered across their faces. They looked at her as if she were overreacting, as if nothing she said or did could affect them. Tendai smiled faintly and invited them in. As soon as they settled in the living room, she pressed play on her phone and a chill ran through the air. The first recording was Lekin shouting, threatening her, saying, "You owe me your life. I can take whatever I want." The smug expression on his face vanished instantly. His eyes widened, panic flashing in their depths, and his wife's smirk faltered as the words played again, loud and clear. Tendai didn't stop there. She laid out the printed bank statements, showing every transaction he had taken from her account, every stolen penny. Lekin's hands trembled as he realized the trail of evidence could not be denied. Then she played the children's recordings, their small voices telling the truth about being locked outside, about being forced to lie, about the bruises on Beezy's arms. The room felt heavy with tension, silence pressing down like a physical weight. For the first time, Lekin saw clearly that he was trapped. There was no bluffing, no excuses, no smirking or threats that could cover this up. Tendai looked at him calmly, her heart steady but her eyes sharp, letting him feel the full weight of his actions reflected in the evidence. His wife's face turned pale, lips trembling, as she realized the scale of what had been done and how undeniable the proof was. Lekin, usually so confident and domineering, looked small and powerless, swallowed by the reality of his own mistakes. Tendai's voice broke the silence softly, firm but controlled. "This is everything. Every word, every action. You cannot deny it. You have made your choice, and now you face the consequences." Neither of them spoke. Their arrogance had vanished completely, replaced with fear, shock, and disbelief. Tendai felt a surge of quiet triumph. Not revenge, not anger, but the satisfaction of finally showing the truth. The man who had once threatened her, who had used his own children as pawns, now sat in her living room, facing the evidence he could not escape. And in that moment, Tendai knew that the power had shifted. She was no longer the victim. She was in control, calm and unshaken, while Lekin and his wife realized, finally, that they were cornered, and there was no way out. Tendai leaned back slightly, keeping her voice calm and steady, letting the silence hang in the room after the recordings and documents had spoken for themselves. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She didn't throw threats or insults. Instead, she looked Lekin in the eye and said quietly, clearly, "I'm reporting everything to the authorities. Every word, every transaction, every recording. But I'm giving you one chance. Sign full custody of the children over to me. And this can stop here." The words landed like a weight in the room. Lekin's face went pale, his usual arrogance slipping away as he glanced at the evidence spread across the table. His wife's hands clenched nervously, and she muttered something under her breath, but Tendai didn't flinch. She had prepared for this. They understood immediately what was at stake. If the recordings, the bank logs, and the children's testimony reached the authorities or the court, they would lose everything: money, reputation, and control over the children. Panic replaced their earlier smugness. Lekin's voice shook as he stammered, trying to find a way out, but every word he spoke only showed how cornered he truly was. Tendai remained calm, letting them feel the full pressure of the situation without raising her own voice. Slowly, hesitantly, Lekin reached for a pen. His hands were trembling, his eyes darting between Tendai and the evidence, knowing he had no choice. His wife leaned over, whispering, panic written all over her face, and together they signed the papers, each movement stiff and shaky, the finality sinking in. Tendai watched quietly, her expression calm, almost gentle, as the legal custody papers were completed. There was no celebration, no triumphant shout, only the quiet satisfaction that justice had been done. The children were safe now. They would no longer live in fear of a man who had once terrorized them, who had stolen from their aunt, and manipulated them as pawns. Tendai felt a wave of relief and strength flow through her. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to fight with anger. The power had shifted naturally, quietly, with truth and preparation. And it was undeniable. Lekin and his wife, who had once held all the control, were now powerless, cornered by their own actions. Tendai breathed slowly, looking at the children's faces, knowing that from this moment on, nothing could hurt them again. She had protected them without cruelty, without revenge, using only courage, preparation, and the quiet force of truth. The room, once filled with fear and tension, now held a calm that only justice and care could bring. In that quiet moment, Tendai realized she had won not by force or anger, but by being patient, smart, and unwavering, turning the tables completely and powerfully, without a single scream. Months passed, and Tendai finally felt the calm she had been fighting for settle over her life. She watched Bizi and Chima running and laughing through the sunlit rooms of their new home, the warmth filling every corner. The children's laughter was light, free, and unafraid, a sound she hadn't heard for so long. She didn't need to punish her brother. Lekin had already destroyed his own life with his greed, his cruelty, and his lies. Tendai didn't seek revenge, didn't plot to humiliate him, or take delight in his failures. She had focused on protecting the innocent, and in doing so she had restored their safety, their happiness, and their childhood. One quiet evening, Tendai sat on the couch as Bizi crawled into her lap, wrapping her small arms around her tightly. Her voice was soft, barely more than a whisper, but full of sincerity. "Auntie, thank you for choosing us even when our own parents didn't." Tendai felt her chest swell with a warmth that came from deep within. She stroked Bizi's hair gently, her eyes misty but calm, and whispered back, "I will always choose you. Always." She looked around the home, the warmth, the peace, the little details that made it theirs, and realized that this was her true victory. She had not destroyed anyone. She had built something lasting, something safe, something filled with love. She had turned a nightmare into a life where cruelty could never reach them again. The children's smiles, their laughter, their sense of security, these were the real rewards. Tendai knew that her courage, patience, and careful planning had been stronger than any anger or desire for revenge. She had faced betrayal and fear, and instead of letting it break her, she had created a home where innocence and trust could thrive. That evening, as the sun set outside, painting the walls in warm gold, Tendai watched Bizi and Chima play, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to breathe fully, to relax completely. The storm of the past months had passed, leaving behind not resentment, not triumph over someone else's misery, but the quiet, powerful peace of a life built on courage, care, and love. She had protected what mattered most, and in doing so, had reclaimed her own strength. Tendai smiled softly, knowing that no one could ever touch what she had built. Not her brother, not his cruelty, not anything from the past. She had chosen wisely. She had chosen courage. And that choice had changed everything.